3 weeks into October, and you're already hitting a wall finding easy fall recipes that are good for your Crohn's or colitis and also get that kid stamp of approval. If you love tasty fall recipes that are also good for your gut and something that your clan will enjoy, you're going to love this episode. You're also going to love this episode if you're looking for a real life story of how the specific carbohydrate diet can work to help control your IBD symptoms. With me on this episode of the Cheeky Podcast is Jennifer Brown, SCD follower and recipe developer at her website, A Life of Happenstance. Here's just a few highlights from the interview. We talk about how stress and anxiety can affect your Crohn's or colitis. Jennifer tells us about how her pregnancy affected her IBD. We talk about what advice Jennifer would give to someone who's just starting out on the specific carbohydrate diet. And then, of course, Jennifer shares her favorite fall recipes from her blog, ones that are hot off the press. Let's get into it.
Stress is probably my biggest trigger. More than food, stress plays a very big part, I have found, in my symptoms. So lots of deep breathing, lots of yoga. Something that I have searched out, which I wish I had searched out years and years ago, is a therapist. That really helps with my anxiety. Journaling, just lots of little things. But yeah, stress plays a huge, huge part in my ulcerative colitis and how I'm feeling on a day-to-day basis.
Yeah, I agree. It really does for me as well. Stress is a huge factor for me. And like you said, it's even more than food. For me, my biggest trigger is sleep and my ability to have quality sleep, but stress would probably be up there as number 2 for me. I'm definitely a person that lends more towards anxiety as well. It's just really interesting on it. I really like what you said about the things that are helping you. You mentioned yoga, you mentioned keeping a journal, things like that, knowing that you're feeling stress. So I know people are always looking for, how can I reduce my stress? So those are a few ways, right? Those are a few ways right there. Tell me about journaling. What does that look like for you? Is it like free form journaling? Is it journaling what you're eating? What does journaling look like for you and how does that help your stress?
So in the evenings, I like to do a gratitude journal. I come up with 3 things, sometimes more, sometimes less, depending on the day. But that really helps ground me and really focus more on the positives. I feel like as an anxious person, I tend to kind of look at the negatives more than the positives, which just makes you feel more anxious. So doing that gratitude journal really helps. And then I do free form journaling. I try to do a little bit every single morning. And it's just kind of a brain dump. I just write down whatever I'm feeling, whatever I'm thinking about. And it really kind of helps me process what's happening in my brain. And it gives me some good quality time alone before the kids wake up and I'm kind of on for the day.
Yes. We need to take that time as moms, either in the morning when they're not awake yet, or at night when they've gone to bed. And it will depend on the age of your kids, right? Depending on, are they early risers and, what age are they? Maybe your kids are night owls because they're teenagers, but we have to find that time for us. For me, Jennifer, it's I do journaling, but I also really like to meditate. That's a really big factor in controlling my stress. So I just like that we kind of just batted around a few ideas because I know moms are always saying to me, I have so much stress, anxiety. What can I do about it? And that answer is different for everybody, isn't it?
Yes, it definitely is. And it takes, I think, a little trial and error to figure out what works for you. I have tried meditation so much. And what I have found is that sitting there quietly without anything to do makes me more anxious, which is why the journaling is kind of, my meditation.
When did your disease change during pregnancy? Was it the pregnancy itself? Was it after? What was that like for you?
It was, for me, it was during the pregnancy itself. With my first child, it was during my last trimester. And with my second child, it was essentially um, the entire pregnancy. So it, even within pregnancies, it can look completely different.
Yeah, that's true. One pregnancy can be completely different than the other, right? Just like kids are different, the pregnancy is
Yes.
different, and how it affects our Crohn's and colitis is different.
Yes.
And so to then achieve remission after that, was it medication that helped? Or we need to back up for just a second. Are you on the specific, you are on the specific carbohydrate diet while you're pregnant with both kids, correct?
And I was adding in foods that would be deemed illegal, things
Right,
like
right.
saltine crackers, sweet potatoes. I didn't go crazy, but I did add things in that are not allowed on the diet.
Yeah, but so you had started the diet before you
Yes,
got
before I
pregnant.
had children. Yes.
Yes, yes, that's what I just wanted to make sure I had the timeline correct. So you start the
Yes.
specific carbohydrate diet,
Mhm.
and then you get pregnant, and then there's some blips with your colitis during that time, and some eating food that really worked well for you during that time, which is
Correct.
another thing that I think is important. Elaine, in her fanatical adherence, is really important to achieve remission, but we also need to know our bodies. We need to think about, how is this impacting my body, and is there another food that, especially during the times of pregnancy, is there a food that I should bring in that might support me right now?
Yes, I agree. It's very important. And is it is it University of Massachusetts? Is it UMass that's
Yes,
IBD, AID,
yes.
and Seattle Children's Hospital that just had a clinical trial with SCD? So, and modified SCD, I should say, as
Right.
well. And I think it's really important to continue to advance the science.
Yeah, exactly. And it doesn't, for some people, it doesn't have to be an all or nothing thing. We can start slow, we can learn to incorporate these things, and then we can decide, do we want to go all in? There isn't one perfect way. It's about finding the way that works for you. So, for anybody who's thinking about the specific carbohydrate diet right now, do you have any advice? They're on the fence, they're thinking, should I do it? Should I not do it? When you said they don't need to deprive themselves, that just kind of got me thinking, what else would you say? Is there any advice that you would say to someone who's just starting out?
I would say to be honest with yourself about your cooking ability. When I started,
Hmm.
I almost never cooked. I didn't know how to grocery shop. It was a very steep learning curve for me. I was getting my meat from my mom. My mom was buying meat every day, and I was living by myself at the time. She would slice my meat for me and package it into single
Oh my
serving.
gosh.
I mean, yeah, I really did
Oh,
not know anything. I didn't know how to read a food label or where the ingredients could be found.
and look at you now. Oh my goodness. Look, if that isn't a success story, I love
So
it.
I would say to be honest about your cooking ability. If you're someone who is, a seasoned cook, go for it. Be adventurous, try new flavor combinations. If you're someone who, like me, when I first started, really didn't know much about cooking, things can get overwhelming very quickly. So I would say to just start simple. Simple is best anyway, a protein, a vegetable, and just kind of, go from there and slowly build from there because you don't want to get overwhelmed and burnt out because it is a lot of cooking, it's a lot of dishes, and it's a
Mhm.
big lifestyle change.
I love that advice. It doesn't have to be as complicated as we think, right? You just need a good protein, a good vegetable, maybe even a double vegetable, a little side of fruit if you want, and that's a meal, right? It doesn't have to be complicated. Go ahead and just grill up a piece of chicken or a piece of fish, make a little hamburger. You know what I mean? It can be simple. It doesn't have to be complicated.
Yes. And I did an Instagram post about this a while ago. looking at my feed on Instagram, you would think that we eat gourmet or close to gourmet every single day, and that we're eating desserts every single day. And that's not the case. That is not our reality. Unless I'm recipe testing, dinner is simple. It's, grilled chicken and steamed vegetables, or a whole roasted chicken with roasted vegetables. It's very simple: a protein, a vegetable. And I tell people a lot to save the big desserts, save the big time consuming meals for special occasions. Save it for a birthday, save it when you're celebrating something on a Saturday night. Don't try and do a big complicated meal in the middle of the week. Just keep it simple. So I've just released 3 new recipes, probably within the last 2 weeks. Okay. I have a pumpkin bread recipe that is delicious. It's made with almond flour. It has pumpkin puree in it. It's sweetened with honey. You can add chopped walnuts either to the batter or on top. I mean, you can use whatever kind of nut you want, almonds or pecans. But it's so good. And you can pair that with, of course, butter or apple butter, which is another new recipe that I've just released. It's a slow cooker apple butter. It does take a while. It takes about 12 hours total in the slow cooker.
But all in the slow cooker, so you don't have to do anything. You just put it in and leave it?
You just put it in, you leave it about 9 hours in, take it out, blend it, put it back in the slow cooker to finish. And that's it. And your house smells amazing.
I've never made apple butter before, but I love it.
It's delicious. It's apple jam, essentially. I don't know.
Right. I don't know. Why do they call it butter?
I don't know. It's very confusing. So it's essentially
but we could take your pumpkin bread, put some butter on it, and then put apple butter on it.
Which I have done, and it is so tasty. And the apple butter doesn't have any added sugar to it. There's no honey at all.
Not even honey.
Not even honey. So Fuji apples are the key to that recipe because they're so sweet to begin with.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Yeah. And probably cooking it for so long, you're really concentrating the flavor too. So it gets sweeter, right?
Absolutely. I mean, there really isn't a need to add honey. I don't think. I think it's sweet enough on its own. And then I just released a new cake recipe yesterday. I'm super excited about it. It is an apple cider almond flour cake, and it has an apple butter filling. And then it's frosted with a cashew caramel frosting.
Wow. Oh, that sounds delicious. Don't you just love her knowledge? Love her gutsy spirit. Jennifer didn't even know how to cook when she got started, but she made up her mind that she was going to do whatever it took to help get her digestive symptoms into remission. And today, she not only cooks SCD with ease, she gives back to our IBD community with her own blog full of SCD legal recipes, over 100 recipes on her blog to just help make our lives a little bit easier. Check out my full interview with Jennifer Brown from A Life of Happenstance in episode 57 of the Cheeky Podcast for Moms with IBD. There's a link to the episode below this video. And if you're a mom who's struggling with Crohn's disease or ulcerative colitis, and you're looking for a home base for all things gut healing, I want you to join us in the Gut Love community. It's our free and fabulous space for moms with IBD, moms who want to thrive in motherhood and thrive in life. There's a link below this video to join us. Until we meet again, I'm wishing you a cheeky and healthy IBD healing journey. Chat soon.